Hello, everybody. How's everybody doing? Got some thumbs up? I hope you're excited because we're going to bust into the toolkits today. All right, got a few more people coming in. All right, everybody. So as always, if you want to take a look at the morning/afternoon opening meeting for our Zoom, you guys want to chat out what you're enjoying or maybe not enjoying about the Elements and Principles project right now. Give me a virtual greeting. I saw a couple thumbs up. We've got a pretty fun joke of the day. It's a Ice Cube chasing a mouse for some cheese, the mouse going into his little home, thinking that the ice cube can't fit. And then the ice cube melts and shocks the mouse and is probably going to get his cheese. We thought that was pretty cute. Okay, we got some chats here. So it was more frustrating than I like. Oh, for describing why you chose the piece. Yeah, that can be a little difficult. Sometimes you may like something, you can't necessarily describe what it is about it that you like. So, but that's good practice to have for sure. Enjoy discovering different artists never heard of. Yeah, there's a lot out there. Enjoyed all of it. Awesome, Ryan. Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, social media can kind of redirect and link into everything. Got Oh yeah, if we're trying to figure out what category each piece of jewelry went into, that can be difficult sometimes. Just try your best. Maybe if there's any information about how big the piece is, any material, or even what you think it might be made out of. Sometimes that can be hard to locate if they don't put that on there with their work. Looks like everybody really enjoyed looking at all the different styles of jewelry. Some really good chats, guys. Thank you. All right, so we're gonna get to the rest of the morning meeting here. So for the featured artists, we have Miss Kimbrough. How do you pronounce her first name? I don't want to mispronounce. I believe it's Luana Kunin.
Sorry, it's Luana Kunin.
Luana, okay, thank you. That's one of Mrs. Kimbrough's really good friends out in San Francisco, and her work is consisted of parts of insects that she embeds in between two pieces of plexiglass, which is a type of plastic. And as you can see, the photo here looks like some iridescent butterfly wings that are really beautiful as a set of earrings. And I'm going to go ahead and launch a poll here. So these are different types of what we call hollowware in jewelry. So anything like a vase, a cup, a mug, anything that's hollow and sometimes large. It can be small as well. But the poll's going to be, do you prefer the first one that looks a little bit more abstract, or the second one that's a little bit more traditional as a tea set? And I believe they're both tea sets. So let me launch this poll here. Okay, so option 1 for a little bit more abstract, and number 2 for more traditional. Waiting on a couple more people. It's pretty close so far. All right, so it looks like pretty close. So number 2 won out with 11, and then option 1 with 8. I actually enjoy both of them. I enjoy traditional and modern. So it's good to see. I'm going to share these out here for you guys. All right, so pretty exciting day, everybody. Those toolkits that we waited so long to get and you picked up, we are now going to go through those and get to use some of the tools a little bit today. So I'm going to go into my Canvas, and just for you all's reference, we are now in Unit 2, which is working with wire, and I've listed the list of your toolkit that we're getting ready to go over, and then our first hands-on project for Unit 2 of chainmail, along with the videos, some samples, and I'll get to that in a little bit. That's where all of that is located. Let me go over the tool list here. Is everybody really excited? You will be soon. Okay. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, do you all have your toolkits? I know this is the first class that we've had them in our possession, but just for every class period that we have, make sure to have your toolkits with you, depending on what we're going to be working on. If you don't have them with you today for some reason, that's okay. Just bring it on Friday. But if you have your kits with you available, go ahead and get them out. And we're just going to run through here to make sure you have all of the tools and the tools that we're going to be using. Okay. So let's begin here. So the first part in your toolkit, you look up at my screen, should have gotten these metal, these are called needle files. They're kind of rough on one end, and they've got a handle on the other. You should have 4 total. There should be one that's round, one that's completely flat, one that is half round, so one half is flat, the other end is curved. And then one, when you look at it from the side, it looks like a knife. It's called knife edge. And I'll get more into these later. I just wanted to make sure that you all had all 4 of these. Does everybody have all 4? Okay. All right, so those are your needle files. These, I also labeled on here that some of the supplies you'll be returning back because they belong in the classroom, and then different ones that you'll be able to keep. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the files back into my kit. And now it looks like you're gonna have 4 of the same. These are called pliers, but one is gonna be called a snip. So I'm going to run through these. The first one I want you to find, you can see this, and there's the picture on your screen. It's called flat nose pliers. And all of these different pliers are going to be useful for you to use to pick up really intricate pieces of metal when you're working. So as you can see on these are called flat nose. They're very rectangular and boxy. Everybody find those? Okay, put those off to the side. And next in the picture on your screen, you're going to have the round nose pliers. And if you look at the other pair of pliers we have, you may think that they look similar, but they are different. The round nose ones almost look like little cylinders or cones that come from a thickness up to a point. They're completely rounded. Whereas these pliers are called chain nose pliers. As you can see in the middle, they're flat. And if you feel around the outside, they're rounded. So for the first project, we're going to be using the round nose and the chain nose pliers to hold our wire. These flat nose pliers, you can go ahead and put those back in your kit because we're going to use those at a later time. Anybody have any questions about the pliers? Okay. So then this next one, that it may or may not look the same handle-wise, these are called snips or cutters. So if you look on the picture here, you're going to have one side that's completely flat or called flush. And then you're going to have another side, it's kind of concave, it dips in. And these are different from pliers because they're specifically used to cut or snip. So you don't want to get these mixed up with your pliers because if you hold too hard, you could cut your wire. Any questions on the snips? Okay. All right. And then you guys saw we have some different kinds of wires. So you have this really small bundle of copper wire. It looks kind of orange pink. This is going to be used for a different project. So if you have this, check it off and then put it back in your toolkit. And for the really, really big bundles of wire, you should have more of copper. It's a really, really big bundle. It looks thicker than the thinner bundle. And you're gonna have the brass that looks yellow. Does everybody have those two groupings of wire? Okay, those two bundles are what we're gonna use to create our first project for chainmail. Okay, so this really, really thin metal right here, you're not gonna use it for chainmail. Okay, so if you need to put it somewhere that's out of sight, out of mind, so you don't get them mixed up, you can do that. You'll just be using the brass and the copper wire that's in the really thick, long bundles. Okay? And now, one of the more important parts, your safety glasses. We love our eyes. Our eyes help us do many, many things, and we want to keep them protected. So if you wear glasses like me, I usually don't put my protective glasses over the top. You can if you want. If you do not wear glasses, you need to put these on at all times. For this first project, you may assume that the wire doesn't seem very dangerous and it's not that big of a deal. But remember these snips that I was telling you about? If you were to cut a small piece of wire and it happened to fling up in your eye, you want those safety glasses on so that you're protecting your eyes. Okay, so anytime you're following a demonstration or you're working on this at home, please, please, please wear your safety glasses to protect your eyes. And then you pick up your kind of wooden rods here. We've got a thick one and a thin one. These are called dowel rods. This is what we're going to be using to make, if you look on your screen here, see the little picture of the ring? That's called a jump ring. And in order to make wire into a perfectly round ring, we're going to wrap them around these dowel rods. And I'll talk more about these later when I show you how to make the jump rings. Any questions so far? All right, we're moving right along. I won't get into this one too much. This is called a drop plate. It's not the most beautiful thing in the world, but Miss Kimbrook and I worked very, very hard on them. So this is for a different project, not for this one. So if you just want to make sure you have it in your kit and put it off to the side and make sure you don't lose it, we'll be good to go on that. And then lastly, you have your little sketchbook notepad. This is pretty much your little sidekick for jewelry. So any thoughts you have, any questions, if you're, creating, you can sketch, you can make notes on what you need to do, all of those good things. So you'll have it all in one place and you'll be able to keep this. And that is the toolkit. Does anyone have any questions? Did anyone not have a tool? All right, so exciting. Okay, so now I'm going to show you guys a little PowerPoint to introduce to you our first project. Okay, does everyone see Unit 2 chainmail? Looks like a PowerPoint. I had some sharing issues last class. Perfect. Okay, if I can get some thumbs up or thumbs down from you guys. Have you heard of chainmail before? All right, we've got about half yes, half no. Good deal. All right, well, it's either going to be a little clarifying for kind of medieval times, and then you get to see how it goes into jewelry. So a little bit about chainmail is that it was a type of body armor or a type of protective clothing. So if you think about old movies or even Lord of the Rings, where they wore the really heavy metal, looks like little rings are all over it when they go into battle, that's chainmail. So originally it was worn by European knights, and it was traditionally made out of steel wire. And that's an important distinction because steel is very, very hard compared to the copper and brass in your kit. So they used steel wire for its strength, and then they made the wire into circles called jump rings. And when the European knights started using it, all different kinds of cultures began to modify it. So if you look over at this picture right here, this is from in a museum. So you can see the chainmail, the little rings in here, and then they've added pieces of sheet metal, or they've added leather onto it to add for comfort and add for more protection as well. So chainmail, since it's made out of really small rings of metal, it's very flexible. And for back in the day, say you were in a fight with someone and they had a sword, you'd get really good protection if someone came at you with a sword and slashed across you. It would protect you. However, depending on how tight those rings are together, it could be vulnerable to weapons like arrows or a spear because it could kind of separate those rings apart. So over here to the side, I also have a little close-up of a sleeve of chainmail. So you can see how tightly woven, and this was also very heavy at times. And at the very bottom, over here with these circles, you see these little dots on the circles. A long time ago, to keep these rings really strong, they used a method called riveting. And a rivet is a really small piece of wire that holds two pieces of metal together through a hole. So if you can imagine this whole piece of armor, someone sat there and did a ring, hammered it, did a ring, hammered it, over and over and over again to get a whole suit of chainmail armor. So now that I've kind of given you a little bit of background, I thought it'd be fun to watch a little video about how to make traditional chainmail and armor. So The last class, my screen sharing, it was a little kind of fuzzy to hear. So I was gonna give you all about 10 minutes to watch this video. It's in Canvas. I'm gonna show you all how to get to it. And after that time, once the video's done, come back into the Zoom meeting. And then we're just gonna have a little discussion where you'll make a comment like something that surprised you or something you found interesting. All right? So we're gonna go back here. Okay, we've got quite a few comments, so I'm gonna go through here and kind of respond and read a little bit here. If you haven't submitted a comment, take your time and go ahead and make your comment. So we've got, yes, it takes a full year to make a coat of armor. I was surprised by that too. And again, it's because they take that rivet, that little tiny piece of metal, and they hand hammer each individual ring. So I assume if it was one person working on it, it would take quite a long time. Take a very long time. Dalton, that's an interesting point that you brought up from watching the video. So in the part of the video where it looked like the little rings were on a piece of wire and they took heat or fire and they were heating the rings, that's a process called annealing. And annealing in jewelry and metalsmithing means to make the metals softer. So with steel, it's already a very hard metal, but when you work it a lot, it gets really hard. So in order for them to rivet it or to try to make a mark on there, they have to heat it so that it gets really red hot, and then that softens it for them to continue working with them. And hopefully when we get back here towards the end of the semester, you all will get into a process called soldering, and you'll learn how to anneal also. Yes, and then oh, there's a couple, it's getting mixed in here. Tedious the process is. How much wire? Yes, so if you thought we were perhaps a little crazy giving you as much wire as we did, that is exactly why we gave you those really big bundles of wire, because making chainmail takes a lot of wire, as you guys saw in the video. The intricacy, yes. And we'll be seeing some different chainmail weaves, so you guys will get to see some different types. And Naomi, I think that's interesting too, that, you know, a lot of things that have been around for hundreds and hundreds of years, we more than likely have a special tool or a process that makes it a little bit easier and quicker. But there's something about that craft and keeping it really traditional with traditional techniques and tools that is really special that people continue to do. And then, oh, the detail, yeah, did you all notice that the brass ring that looked gold? How they put a little, almost kind of a little piece of metal on, and he tapped it with the hammer, and then it left an imprint on there. A lot of artists in jewelry and artists in general, sometimes they'll have a logo or they'll have a couple of initials that they will literally stamp into the metal so that they can say, hey, this is my piece and I created it. So that's a really nice touch that they put that on there. Really great comments, everybody. Okay. All right, we're gonna get back to the PowerPoint here so then we can get to working with wire. Okay, so just a little quick kind of what you guys can expect for this first hands-on project. So in total, we're gonna have 4 different samples of different chainmail weaves, which I'll go into in just a little bit. So there's European 4-in-1, Japanese, Byzantine, and spiral. And they all have different patterns for their chainmail. And then for our final project, we're all going to be making a chainmail necklace with a clasp, all made out of wire. And so there's going to be a little bit of brainstorming, which is going to be a creative process of how you're going to tackle creating your necklace, some designs you think you might use. We'll probably break out into some breakout rooms on Zoom for that. And unfortunately, with the kind of setup we have being virtual, we only have a certain amount of wire. So everyone will be using the European 4-in-1 chainmail weave. So, but I wanted to make sure you guys got to see a couple different weaves so you could see what's out there. And then finally, we'll get into learning how to create a clasp and making your necklace wearable. I wanted to show you all some pictures of what your workspace at home could potentially look like. So over here, you can see off to the left, you've got wire snips. You remember the snips are the ones that can cut and snip into wire. And today I'm going to show you all how to make all of your jump rings, which you see at the bottom here, that big pile. Hopefully it will be a lot more organized than that. It'll make everybody's lives a lot easier. And then in the middle here, you see those those are two metal pliers. So you may use one or you may use both, and you'll be working with the jump rings to make your chainmail. And also just some different ways of organizing the jump rings and how to create your chainmail. Oh, let's see, yes. Okay, so the first one, I'm going to be showing you the first two on Friday. So the first one we're going to do is the European 4-in-1, which essentially means you're going to take one ring and put 4 rings with it. And then you're going to create a pattern. You see how over here there's a pattern that is repeating? You're going to learn the one pattern and just repeat it over and over and over again. So I wanted to show you how it can traditionally look, and then a little bit more modern version of where they took almost sections of the European 4-in-1 and then connected it with some chain. And then this is just an example of how you saw on that armor, how some of it could be really, really thick, and some of it could be, have some gaps in between those little circles. And that just means there's more rings together. They're tightly knitted, the 4-in-1 right here versus the 8-in-1. And then next we'll have the Japanese sample, and this one to me it's a lot more ornate because we have the mix of the large jump rings and then the smaller jump rings. And so this pattern works as you have a large jump ring, and depending on where it is, you put 4 small rings, and then you connect another large ring with some small rings to get this ornate pattern here. And over to the right are some modern examples of how people have taken the Japanese weave for chainmail and kind of put their own artistic spin on it. And then next week, I'll show you guys how to do the Byzantine. Again, another repetitious pattern. You'll learn this one area and repeat it until you get the length you want. And it has a very rope-like looking texture, and it's just a really cool texture in general. And then the last sample we'll do is called the spiral. So it's exactly what it looks like. I think it kind of looks like a kind of a ribbon swirled up, or even DNA. But by taking those little jump rings and by interlinking them, it'll slowly twist, which I'll show you how to do next week. I just wanted to show you guys just a little bit in your head of what the 4 samples are going to look like the next few class periods. And then just really quick, just kind of some variations into jewelry. You are not required to do any of these, but it's just to kind of get your creative juices flowing. So some people have taken this chainmail technique and made rings. Some of them have taken the technique and interwoven other materials, such as ribbon here, some little beads, a pendant, and then over here to the left is that Japanese weave that they've made almost, they look like flowers, into a bracelet. Does anyone have any questions so far? Getting more excited, I hope. Yes? Okay. All right, so it's demo time. So you guys are gonna keep your toolkits out, and you're gonna have to give me a couple minutes, just bear with me. I'm gonna get the iPad set up, so you guys are gonna be able to watch what I do, and it'll look awesome, and you can follow with me. So give me just a few minutes, and I'll be right back. This is amazing. Can you guys see a piece of canvas on a table? Yes. Oh my gosh, this did not work last class period, so you guys are gonna get a real HD experience here. Okay. So for this next part, I'm going to show you guys how to make these jump rings that I've been talking about this whole time. So if you want to follow along and do it with me, you can. If you'd rather, watch this later, because we're gonna have it recorded and you want to watch and then you can try it later, it's whatever you guys want to do. And please, 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 when I'm doing this, if you have any questions, unmute yourself, chat it out so I can slow down or I can clarify, because I want to make sure that you guys get this down and you start having some fun. So what we're going to do is I'm going to have you guys get these two pliers. This is the chain nose, the round, the round ended pliers. And these are the chain pliers. So you're gonna have those two. You're also gonna get those snips that look like this. And then you're gonna find one of the dowel rods. I'm gonna use this small one, and you only need one of them. So you're gonna get one of those. And then lastly, you're gonna get wire. I do not have any brass wire, but you guys are going to do all of your samples in brass. So brass is that little bundle that looks yellow, it looks gold. And it's the really long one. Remember, we are not using this really thin stuff, okay? So put this away and grab the brass wire that is yellow. So this right here, the orange, is copper. This is what I'm gonna use. You guys are gonna use brass, the yellow one. Is everybody okay finding the brass? Okay, awesome. So what you're gonna do is, your wire's kind of bundled like this, where it has this curve on the end. You're going to take your snips and we're gonna cut it. It doesn't have to be precise, but the bundles, sorry, I'm trying to do my finger, the bundles I gave you are pretty long. You're gonna snip from one end to the other where it curves. So you just have a nice long piece of wire. So I'm just gonna have, so you can't really see it, but this is my long piece of wire. And again, you're gonna use the yellow, the brass wire. and you're gonna use your snips to cut it. How's everyone doing?
About how long should it be after you've cut it?
I mean, around a foot. If it's a little short, little long, it's okay. This is not, we're just kind of experimenting and just kind of learning how to use the tools and get familiar with how to make jump rings, which you'll be making a ton. So just about, if you can see me talking, it's about, that long or so. And if it's shorter, no worries, because you're gonna need all the jump rings you can get, okay? All right, is everybody ready to begin making jump rings? Okay, let's do it. All right, so.
I got a question.
Yeah.
So, this is so dumb. So I forgot class started because I was doing homework.
Uh-huh.
And I just joined like 5 minutes ago.
Oh, okay, no worries. Do you have time to stay after just for a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's fine. Yeah,
Okay.
I got my stuff right here. I just kind of got lost.
Oh, okay, perfect. No worries. It's probably
Okay.
a little crazy right now to come in on. So go ahead.
Yeah.
Just watch a little bit. This
Okay.
might help start watching, and then I'll go back over. And if anybody else needs to stay behind too and wants a little bit more clarification, we'll do that afterwards.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, no worries. All right, so here we go, everybody. So we're gonna take our dowel rod, and you see this hole? That is where your wire is going to go through. Essentially what we're gonna do is we are going to wrap wire all the way down this, okay? And we need to hold it in place because we need really, really tight jump rings. So I'm gonna get an end of my wire, and I'm just gonna stick it through the hole. It doesn't matter which side or anything. You don't want a really small amount. You also don't need this much. Okay, so I'm gonna do about this, and you're just gonna fold it over with your finger, and you're probably gonna feel that that end of the wire's pretty sharp. So if you grab some pliers, I've got the chain nose here, the flat with the round. I'm gonna take these and just push, kind of squeeze the wire down onto the dowel rod, just so that it's not gonna snag and it's really tight on the dowel rod. Does everybody see that? Okay. This doesn't have to be perfect. This is just to hold the wire in place when we go to wrap. All right, I'm gonna scroll through here, see how you guys are doing. Are you guys excited to be actually doing hands-on creating? Feels good. Okay. So, what we're gonna do now is we're gonna start wrapping this wire. It honestly doesn't matter what hand you use, if you wrap over, if you wrap under, whatever's most comfortable for you. It is important, however, to remember as I'm holding my wire and I'm gonna be wrapping it, you do not wanna hold your dowel rod clear down here at the end, because this is really thin and it could possibly snap and break, or it's gonna be really hard to wrap your wire. So when you start out, you wanna hold your dowel rod this close, okay? And as I'm wrapping, you guys, I'm wrapping really hard. My fingers, like, can you see my thumb? Like, it's getting like red. See how my fingers go like from red to white? That's the kind of strength you're gonna need to do this, because we're trying to get really, really nice round jump rings. So I'm gonna start here. Again, it doesn't matter. I like to hold my dominant hand on the dowel rod and wrap with my non-dominant. If you start that way and it feels uncomfortable, just switch and try the other side. This is all about trying to figure out how to use the tools in the most comfortable way for you to make what we're needing to make, okay? So as I'm wrapping, so I've got really good pressure right here. I'm trying to butt this long wire up against this ring in front of it. And you want to make it really tight. So say I come around, you don't want it like this. You want it nice and tight. Did everybody see that? Okay, so as you're wrapping, you don't want to wrap like this. That's way too far apart. You won't have really nice, round, consistent jump rings. You want it to be really nice and tight. So right now, as you guys are watching it, I'm actually twisting the dowel rod to wrap. The main reason I'm doing that is I have an iPad right above and I can't really get the full wrapping. You can use your arm to, I mean, if you look over to where I'm saying, like completely like wrap around. Use your whole arm, your shoulders, or you can do it like me and just do your wrists. So as you're wrapping, you're keeping it really, really tight to this one. And you just keep going. And since everybody's new to this, your hands, the more we get into this chainmail, you might find your hands getting sore or your wrists. So if you're doing this, you feel like your fingers are hurting, just kind of stop. I like to pop my fingers. I kind of pull my fingers back. I move my wrists. Just kind of stretch it out and wiggle your hands. Or if you need to take a break, take a break. But you just want to go nice and slow and just keep wrapping. Until you get all the way to the end, and then we'll do the next part. You'll have a nice little coil. It makes me so happy to see you all working.
How much should still be sticking out at the end? Because like I have about.
Oh, that's perfect. Go ahead and leave that there. And when everybody's ready, I'll show you what to do next with some pliers.
Okay.
Yeah, looks good.
How do you like get the end piece to like, what do you do with it?
Sure, guys. So yeah, I'll go ahead and do that. So for those of you that are still wrapping, if you pause for a minute and look up at your screen, when you get to the very end, you're gonna have this weird little part that's sticking up. And since we wanna get as many jump rings out of our coil as we can, you're gonna take your chain nose pliers, flat in the middle, round on the outside, and just like with up top, with the hole, you're just gonna kind of push it down and squeeze it. And it doesn't have to be perfect. That just makes it a little bit more round. And then the next step, we're probably gonna start snipping parts off. You just wanna have this end piece as flat and flush as you can. Is everybody almost good with their coils? Okay, everybody, I'm gonna move on to the next step, just so, you know, for the recording, if it takes a little bit, you can go back and look. But once you've wrapped all of your wire down and made your jump rings, and then you took, where are they? Little chain nose pliers here, and then you kind of just squished that little end down. Now it's time to cut this coil off of the dowel rod. So we're wanting to remove it off of the dowel rod so that we can start using our snips, the little clippers, and start clipping each individual ring to make these little jump rings. Okay? So the first thing we have to think about is we wrapped wire through this hole. So unless we remove that wire, the coil's not going to come off. So you're going to take your snips, the ones that cut, and what I like to do is, actually, back up a little bit here. Take your chain nose pliers, these ones right here, and at the top by the hole, take the wire and just bend it so it's kind of straight coming out of that hole. Once you've done that, you take your snips, and as you're cutting, everybody, it's just a good kind of practice when you're holding these, hold them with this flat side, like ready to cut. Try not to hold them with the concave part in, because holding it with the flush, I can see exactly how much I want to cut off. If you cut it here, it's really hard to see because it's so far down exactly how much you're cutting off and what you're doing. Okay, so I'm going to have this flush side up or down for this, and see the wire coming out of the hole. I'm going to just snip this. If you're metal pliers dig into the wood, that's okay. So I'm going to cut, and what you might have to do is you might have to squeeze and wiggle a little bit, and then a piece of wire comes out, and now I can move my coil. So again, this little piece was wrapped around. You're going to take your chain nose pliers. You're going to straighten it. And then you're going to take your snips, ones that cut, and you're going to cut the wire that's coming out of the other side of the hole. And then you just pull that little piece of wire through, and you put it off to the side. How's everybody doing? Doing all right? Okay. So now with this little random piece of wire, it's really not going to turn into anything. So when we all come back into class, we have something called a scrap bin, where we put little random pieces like metal like this into, and then we recycle it. So if you want to just take some pliers and just kind of wrap it a little bit so it's not so sharp, just kind of make it into some kind of little shape. You can put this in a little baggie or just back in your toolkit, and when we come back in person, anything you have that's just a little piece that you cut off and you're not going to use, you can put that in the scrap bin. Okay? So now that I've cut that off, take your coil off. For some of you, if it's really tight, you may have to kind of wiggle it. And then it comes off and you put the dowel rod aside. Got your nice little coil. Anybody have their coils want to hold up? There's a coil. Ooh, a long coil. Long coil. Oh, you guys are pros. That's awesome. Sweet. No big deal at all. Brian, yours is like a little slinky. It's got some spring in it. Fantastic. All right. So now the good part. So we're going to take this coil. We're going to turn it into all these little jump rings. So what we're going to do is see how the ends from about, let me see if I can get something to point. Like this little section right here is kind of like flat, not really round. You can cut that off to make sure you have a completely round jump ring. So again, when you're cutting, have the flush, the flat part of your snippers where I can see. So what I'm looking at is right now, like I want to cut right about here. And I can exactly see how much I'm going to cut off. If I cut this way, and you're looking from that side, it's a little bit harder to see, but use this flat side as a way to precisely cut where you want. Now when you're cutting, you're not cutting like 5 at a time. It's going to be really hard to do, and the jump rings are going to get deformed. So all you're going to do is just move your snips on one coil. And then you squeeze. See how it crimped? And with your finger, you can kind of wiggle it. And see how I fixed that? Now I'm going to have perfectly round jump rings. So again, I've got this little random piece. I'm going to put it over my scrap pile. And so now we're just going to continue this process all the way through till we get all these jump rings. So here's my end. I'm going to use the flush side of my cutters. I'm going to match it up perfectly with the end of this. Because if you don't, come here, match the ends up, they can't wiggle together to fit. Okay? So again, you're going to take your snippers, use the flat side to line it up, only cut the next ring, squeeze, and slightly wiggle. This should be barely, you guys shouldn't have to be tugging on it at all. If you squeeze your pliers and you're really having to wiggle and move, then you need to squeeze and try to cut a little bit more. And again, as you're doing this, remember to kind of massage the palm of your hand, crack your fingers if you need, wiggle your fingers to kind of keep stretched out. You're using your hands in ways they've never known. So again, I'm taking the flush side, putting it up, squeeze, and then just barely pulling off. And you will just continue that all the way down to the end. Now, if you're not a big fan of this process, I hope you warm up to it because there's going to be a lot of this in your future. All of these jump rings will be used to make the chainmail. And just a little sneak peek, you're like, what the heck am I doing with these jump rings? That's an example. If you look at my screen, that's a European 4-in-1. So all of this work you're doing to make all these jump rings are also that you can just dive into making the chainmail. Anybody have any questions? Is it going okay?
You cut like right below the, so like, would I cut like right below where this one ends?
Yes, like right up next to it. So if you take the flat part of your cutters right here and just line it up with this end.
Okay.
Like right there. And so if you match it up and then slowly move it up to the next ring and then squeeze. Oh, and see, it didn't come apart very easily. So I'm going to do it again. And then you have your jump ring. If you guys can see, the longer I snip, if you look at my screen, see this little, since it's the end that I squished down, that needs to probably come off. So as you're cutting, you're just gonna keep going until you get to that point, and then we can fix that. Oh, I moved the screen, sorry. All right, so I'm almost to the end. So if everybody wants to look up at my screen real quick here. So see how I've got this really weird circle? I know that you want to get as many jump rings as you can, but we only want nice round jump rings. So when I clip right here, pull this jump ring off. Now look at that. Where's it going? Hello? Ew, that's gross. See that end, how it's kind of flat? And then they don't even match up in the middle? You don't want to use that. Not only will it not look nice when you're making your pattern, but if you have a ring that's not completely round, it could really make the chainmail weave that you're doing difficult because it won't lay correctly. Okay, so if you get a ring like this or half of a ring, just take some pliers and squish them. Squish it here, and then I'm going to put it in the scrap pile. And I have all my jump rings. Does anybody have any questions on making the jump rings?
So like if you have the ring and then like a little, like if the end kind of sticks up a little bit, is that bad? Or can you press it?
I'm trying to, let me see. Can you hold it up to your screen a little bit? See what we get.
I don't know.
If you hold it here, if you take your ring and like hold up the end and then put your hand behind it, that'll kind of help. A little closer, sorry, this is so hard. So are you talking about when the ends match up?
Yeah.
Do they look kind of thin?
One just like, they don't like match up evenly. One kind of is like sticking up from the way I like cut it.
Okay, so that's a good point. I was gonna get into this more on Friday, but I'll do it now. So right now when you're snipping, how I told you there's this concave, here I'll stand up here, this concave area in your snips, that's what's creating that kind of like squished pinch look on your metal. For your samples, I'm not having you guys do this, but for your necklace, remember your needle files in your kit. These files are made to even out metal and to make it smooth. So if you look at this jump ring, see how this side looks kind of flat and crimped? Everybody see that? You would pull it apart and file that down until it gets flat. And then when you push it back together, it will stay. But for the samples, I want you guys to just be able to get more familiar with the tools, using the jump rings, getting familiar with the techniques. And then once we go into your necklace, then I'll go over more about the filing and making sure that each of those rings really match up and that they butt up. Does that answer your question? Okay, good deal. Okay, everybody, well, congratulations on your first jewelry kind of assignment task. You guys are the best coil wrappered ring, jump ring makers ever. Super proud. So yeah, remember as you're doing this, and if you choose to make more of these, remember, so if you guys look up at my screen and just look at my face, not the mirrored screen, you can do some exercises where you push your wrists back. You can push your wrists down. And you don't want to do it really hard till it hurts, but just enough that you feel a stretch. You can pull your thumbs back a little bit. And also you can do this stretch where you put your hands together and you push your elbows out, and that helps to stretch your arms and your hands. And then kind of just shake it out. Because you may not feel it now, but the longer you work with it, your hands have never worked with wire and tools like this for a long period of time. So just like with anything, any muscles, you just need to stretch it out a little bit. Any questions? Okay. So I'm going to stop my share here. And then one last thing I have for you all is, this might be easier just to do in Zoom. I have an exit ticket for you guys to do, so it helps me know what went well when I taught you today. So if you all, does everybody know how to open their chat in Zoom? Yes? Okay, if everybody could just pause really quick and open their chat on Zoom. I'm going to send this link. If you quickly just click on it and open it up in your browser so you have it, this is called an exit ticket. So I just have a few questions for you guys to answer, so it kind of lets me get some feedback to know how I did or what I could do better. And if you guys could fill that out and submit it, I'd appreciate it. And I think that's all we're going to do for today. That was a lot of information, a lot of new tools, and hopefully you all got more excitement today. So you can finish your coil of jump rings. The jump rings you made, try to find some kind of little Ziploc baggie, a little container, preferably not for food because it's holding this metal, but just something to hold these, because you guys, these things are going to scatter. Like sometimes when you snip them, they could go flying, go every which way, roll off your table. So try to have a baggie or a little container or something that you can keep all these jump rings in, because the last thing you want is, hey, where's all those jump rings I spent 30 minutes making, and then you can't find them. And I will be very sad for you as well. So was anybody not able to open the Google document link? It's in the chat. Is everybody good? Okay, well, could you guys please give me some kind of reaction to see if you enjoyed making jump rings? Big smiles. Got some hearts. Awesome. Glad you guys are liking it. So it'll get, once we get these jump rings done, it'll be a lot more exciting on Friday to get into the different weaves. So if anybody wants to stay back, I know that someone came in a little bit late, no worries. If you guys want to stay back, have any questions for me to clarify anything, otherwise, I'll see you on Friday, and just make sure to have your toolkit with you and be ready to make some chainmail. All right, I'll see you guys later.